Hi everyone, I'm Ariane Dekker. I'm a final year PhD student at GRAPPA at the University of Amsterdam, and I will talk about indirect searches for warm dark matter particles. This talk will be based on these two papers, for which I will especially focus on the first paper that came out on arXiv today. And and in this work we test warm dark matter models by using Milky Way satellite observations. So to give a brief introduction, in the standard lambda CDM cosmological model, structure forms through hierarchical merging of dark matter halos, in which smaller halos collapse first and merge to form larger systems, and then baryonic matter can settle within these halos and form galaxies. And so from numerical simulations, we find that CDM cold dark matter explains very well the observed structures above about a megaparsec. However, small-scale observations of dwarf and satellite galaxies challenge this cold dark matter model. And so in particular, there are these three issues. The first is the cusp core problem, in which dark matter halos are expected to have a cusp density profile. However, observations show a more flat and chord profile towards inner radii. Moreover, the most massive satellite galaxies in the Milky Way have masses that are about 5 times smaller than predicted from simulations, which is the too big to fail problem. And finally, the observed number of satellites in the Milky Way are lower than predicted, and we are missing satellites. So how can we explain these? So there are two types of solutions, as also discussed during the talk by Anna and Janina. One is due to baryonic physics. So this could help some of these tensions through, for instance, galaxy formation physics. However, these are not enough to solve all of the tensions. And so another solution is that dark matter could be something different than cold, and could, for instance, consist out of warm dark matter particles, of which sterile neutrinos are well-motivated candidates. So the reason why warm dark matter can be a solution is because these particles have large thermal velocities at early times and therefore suppress structure formation due to free streaming effects. And since small-scale structures are raised in the case of warm dark matter, the abundance of small-scale structures offer a way to distinguish between dark matter models. So in this work, we used a number of satellites in the Milky Way to test warm dark matter models. And in order to estimate the number of subhalos, we can either use numerical simulations or analytical models. And since numerical simulations are limited to numerical resolution and computational time, this motivates towards developing fast and accurate analytical models. And in this talk, I present a new analytical model that describes subhalo properties and which also for the first time incorporates subhalo evolution due to tidal stripping for warm dark matter particles. So I will briefly go through the important steps of this model, which is called SASHIMI, which stands for semi-analytical subhalo inference modeling, for which we will also publish the code, so these will be accessible anytime soon. So the main input and the first step of the SASHIMI model is the matter power spectrum that describes initial fluctuations in the matter density in the early universe. And in the case of warm dark matter particles, small-scale perturbations are suppressed, and we expect a cutoff in the power spectrum with respect to the cold dark matter case. And this cutoff is stronger the warmer the particle is, and also depends on the production mechanism. So secondly, dark matter subhalos accrete onto larger host halos, as represented on the left for subhalos in red and the host halo in blue. So for a given matter power spectrum, we want a description for the accretion history of dark matter halos. And so we use the analytical expression based on the extended Purchester formalism. And with these expressions, we can obtain the subhalo mass function that describe the distribution of subhalo masses and redshifts at which they accrete onto their host halo. So this subhalo mass function based on extended Purchester formalism describes subhalo properties when they accrete. However, more realistically, when subhalos accrete onto a larger halo, they lose mass due to tidal stripping effects. So based on the model by eROSITA et al., we incorporate this effect by assuming that mass loss takes place after the first orbit at its pericenter, because that's where the tidal field is strongest. And we assume that all mass beyond the tidal radius of the subhalo is stripped. So this results in subhalos that have different internal structures, and more importantly, some subhalos that are completely disrupted and removed from the model. So these are the main steps of the model that I just discussed. And moreover, not all subhalos form satellites within, and whether a satellite galaxy is formed depends on the galaxy formation model. These are, however, model dependent, and the results depend on a choice of parameters, and which is why we assume that all subhalos host satellites as our canonical constraints. But next to that, we can also set some galaxy formation condition on, for instance, the mass or circular velocity below which galaxy formation is thought to be inefficient. So given this model, fifth step is to calculate the total number of satellites in the Milky Way by integrating the subhalo mass function, and we compare this with the actual observed number. So the Dark Energy Survey and Pan-STARRS 1 observed 270 satellites in the Milky Way after correcting for their detectability. And so comparing them with our model, we set limits on the warm dark matter mass here on the y-axis. And these results are a function of the Milky Way halo mass, as this is yet uncertain and is shown on the x-axis. And so the pink region shows the canonical constraints in which all subhalos host satellites. And so everything below this region is constrained because these would produce too few satellites. And so we exclude warm dark matter mass between 3.5 and 5 keV, dependent on the Milky Way halo mass. So these offer very stringent and model independent constraints. However, if we do consider satellite forming condition, we obtain this yellow region, which then also improves the results and leaves less room for thermal warm dark matter particles being the dominant dark matter candidate. Moreover, we studied also the case for sterile neutrinos, which are not produced thermally. They are produced through mixing with standard neutrinos through a mixing angle denoted by sinus 2 theta, as here on the y-axis. And on the x-axis here is the sterile neutrino mass. And this production is enhanced due to a lepton asymmetry value following the Sheehan-Fuller production mechanism. And yeah, I would be happy to elaborate more on this after this talk, but the main point of this plot is that the parameter space for sterile neutrino is already quite constrained. So the top and bottom gray areas are excluded, as these would not produce the correct dark matter abundance. The hatched region is excluded based on X-ray observations. And so the results of our work is shown in pink, which does not depend on galaxy formation physics. And with this, we can exclude all sterile neutrino mass smaller than 11.6 keV. And together with also the X-ray constraints, we can exclude all sterile neutrino mass below 20 keV. And so complementary to these results, we can also look at the decay products of sterile neutrinos with X-rays. Sterile neutrinos decay into a standard neutrino and a photon, which has an energy of half its mass. And so with upcoming data from eROSITA, which is an all-sky X-ray survey, we can obtain the sensitivity to observe such narrow X-ray line emission from sterile neutrino decay products. And so I present here the results from this paper where we studied the diffuse X-ray emission coming from the galactic halo. And the results of this work is shown as the green band, which also nearly closes the gap between the upper and lower constraints for sterile neutrinos. So to summarize, I presented our new semi-analytical model SASHIMI, for which the code will be publicly available soon. And so by studying the Milky Way satellites, we can rule out thermal warm dark matter models with mass smaller than 4.4 keV, as well neutrinos with mass smaller than about 12 keV, which are independent constraints, independent of galaxy formation physics. And moreover, we can study the diffuse X-ray emission with future data from eROSITA, and we find complementary constraints for sterile neutrinos. So thank you.